Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. It's a girl Chamalinda. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always coming back, and if you're a new subscriber, I hope you do make it your last. So on today's video, let's delve right into it. It's going to be a story time about my scary cesarean section. I had a baby. I have 4 children by the grace of God. I had my last baby in June and I had her through a cesarean section, making it my second C-section. Okay, but this time it was a little different. If you've not watched my story time about my first cesarean section and complications that came up after the C-section, please, I'll link the video below. Do well to watch it. Oh, my due date came and passed, and then there was still no sign of labor, just like the first. There was still no sign of labor. I was tired. I was at 41 weeks and 4 days. So I had to go back to the hospital to get myself checked out. Okay, so I and hubby went to the hospital, and the doctor checked and said, "Madam, you are in the active stage of labor. I wonder why your cervix is still tightly closed. But since you had a prior C-section and it's not up to 2 years, the recommended years to try for a baby after a C-section is 2 years, but he had a baby less than 2 years after a prior C-section. So he said, since you had a C-section not less than 2 years ago, we will not be helping labor come on. So you have to pray and wait for labor to come on naturally." That was the beginning of the battle, because we waited till the next day. There was still no sign of labor. Okay, so I had to go back home. And pray labor started. Then the next day, my water broke and it was leaking. This is the first time. I have 4 kids, but this is the first time of me experiencing my water breaking. So my water broke and poured out throughout the next day, and I had to go back to the hospital. And the doctor checked again and said my cervix was still very tightly closed. And like he said the first time, there was no way he was going to encourage labor by using drugs and drips and whatever, because I've had a prior C-section less than 2 years ago. And if he had done that, if he had given me maybe medicine, pitocin, and other drugs that helps labor come on, it might make my cervix labor hardly and then tear open. That's why you see women who bleed during labor and can lead to death. So we had to pray that labor come naturally. So I was admitted in the hospital, and I and my hubby, we prayed. I tried running down the hall of the hospital to encourage labor to come on, but labor was still not forthcoming. And then the doctor said, since we live in a tropical, Nigeria is very hot, there's a high rate of me getting an infection since my water has leaked out. So he gave us till the next morning, 10 a.m. And if labor doesn't come on its own naturally, that we'll have to go in for a C-section. I have had a C-section before, but this time I was really scared, because I read a lot of stories about women who went for C-section less than 2 years after they've had their baby, and maybe things going wrongly. So trust me, that night we prayed really hard, praying that labor comes on its own. But the next morning by 10 a.m. there was still no sign of labor, and the doctor said, "Madam, see, we've waited. We don't want to get an infection. Let's go into the theater." And I was wheeled into the theater, but I was very scared. This second time around, I was very scared. I was wheeled into the theater, okay, and then I told it. Since I was very scared, and I told the doctor, "Please, I don't want to sleep off." I told him I didn't want to sleep off, because I was scared that I might I might get the general anesthesia, and then I will sleep off and not be able to wake up after the surgery has been done. So he said, okay, let's try giving the spinal. And they tried 3 times. You know, this injection, the needle used for spinal is so long. I had to go through that 3 times, and it still didn't work. So he said, Madam, instead of wasting time, let's just go right into the surgery. We have to give you general anesthesia. I was scared. I was even crying in the theater. And they gave me the general anesthesia, and I slept off. And then, thankfully, sharing this story is a form of testimony. It's a form of thanking God that I came through that. Even though I was afraid, I was scared, I came out of that alive. So thank God, after the surgery, thank God it was successful. Thank God my baby girl came out alive. My beautiful baby girl came out alive. I also came out alive. Okay, and I was wheeled into the recovery room. As usual, catheter was put in, although thank God everything was fine. Thank God everything was fine. And I was recovering well. Okay. So fast forward, you know, these days you go home 4 or 5 days after a cesarean section. I went home after 4 days after they checked and saw that the wound was the C-section scar was healing properly. So we went back home, and a day after we went back home, on the 5th day of having my C-section, I woke up by 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to have a pee because I was pressed to have a pee. Thank God there was light. Trust Nigeria. Thank God there was light. And I put on the light to go have a pee. And guess what I found out? The bed was totally soaked in blood. And guess where the blood was coming out from? From my C-section scar. That means my scar opened and I was bleeding through my C-section scar. I have never been so scared in my life like that night, that early morning. So I quickly woke up my husband. I just said, please wake up, let's start running to the hospital. See, I'm bleeding from my scar. And I started running downstairs. I didn't even wait for him to get ready. I was just running because who wondered? I was not ready to die. So I was just running downstairs. He was still confused from sleep because he just woke up from sleep. And he was trying to get the car keys. He was trying to get his wallet. I didn't care about those things. I was just running towards the kids. I was already at the gate, trying to open the gate before he caught up with me. Then when we got to the hospital, thankfully, the bleeding stopped. They gave me injections that stopped the bleeding. Then I went back home that same evening. The next day, thinking maybe the worst of it has passed, the next day, I found out that that same C-section scar, that same place I was bleeding from the previous day, was bringing out pus. Whew. It was bringing out pus. And when I mean pus, I don't mean maybe a drop or two of pus. It was gushing out. Pus. It was gushing out from my C-section scar. We had to go back to the hospital, and they checked and they said that the skin, that was the explanation of the doctor. He said the skin has bacteria. Every skin surface has bacteria, and then when there's a break in the skin, sometimes the bacteria finds its way into that break on the skin and leads to infection. Wow. And then we started treating this pus, this infection. The pus was coming from just one end of the scar. Before you knew it, the other end opened up and pus was still coming out from that other end of the scar. I have never been so scared in my life because I tried reading up on Google, and they said sometimes when that infection is not properly treated, it can lead to sepsis. Sep- your blood can get infected, and this can lead to death. Wow, I was scared. And then the series of treatments started, from one antibiotics to another, very strong antibiotics, and what it was not working. There was a day I didn't eat because I was in a hurry to go to the hospital, and then I was given this two doses of antibiotics, and I just saw white. I just saw white and was almost falling, and the nurse had to hold me back, and I was forced to drink a whole bottle of water to calm me down. So to know how strong, to tell you how strong this antibiotics was, from one treatment to another, but it wasn't working. The pus was still coming in. I was going to the hospital for dressing every morning and every evening. By the time I left the hospital in the morning after the wound dressing, before I got to the house, the dressing was already soaked and loose. It was soaked. You know, when plaster gets soaked or sweaty or wet, it doesn't stick to the skin anymore. That was what I was going through. I was dressed in the morning. Before I got back home that same morning, the wound was already loose from too much pus. I continued with this treatment. There were times I lost hope. I said, ha, maybe death that has come. Oh, death that didn't come in the theater, it has come out. It has come now to get me. Thank God I defeated death. I continued this treatment. The doctors would say, Madam, we've tried this, it's not working. It seems your body is already resistant to it. Let's try something else. And we're spending money, we're trying different things. They'll give us these new drugs to buy. We'll rush to go and buy it with heightened hope. And then after 3 days, the doctors will still say it's not working. Let's try something else, and we'll try something else because we didn't want it to look like we didn't try our best. We tried our best. We continued. It was not working. The pus was still gushing out. There was a time the doctor had to stop using drugs, and he started using honey to dress up the wound. He tried it for a whole week. It was still not working, and we had to go back to the antibiotics. This treatment started. I thank God my sister was around then. She was holding my baby as I was going morning and evening to the hospital. Oof. This treatment continued till 8 weeks. I was treating pus for 8 whole weeks. You know, when you give birth, you have to rest for some weeks before you return to work or return to your business. But I had no rest. For 8 whole weeks, I was treating pus. Then suddenly, just one morning, I woke up, and there was a time. After some time, after six, I got tired of good. I even learned how to dress my own wounds. Because by the time in the morning it gets wet and it becomes very uncomfortable and it itches me, I just feel like scratching it. But then, so I had to learn how to dress my own wounds. I go to the hospital, I get dressed in the morning, I dress in the afternoon. Sometimes when I don't have the strength to go back to the hospital, I dress it myself in the evening. This continued till, and I was still taking injections, mind you. This continued to 8 whole weeks. And then one morning I woke up and everything has dried up. Thanks to God. Everything has dried up. Oof. Everything dried up. And then after the pus dried up, we had this to wait for the wounds to dry up because the wounds were still looking fresh. It took additional 2 weeks for these wounds to completely dry off. I went through it. Truly, I went through it. But thank God I came out victorious. The wounds finally dried up. The wounds finally dried up, and I started enjoying my baby. This story is the form of a testimony, and to tell you that there are a lot of things that are not being discussed after a C-section. Don't tell you your stomach becomes big after a C-section. This one happens, that one happens. They don't tell you the complications that might arise. This is my second CS, and I had complications the first CS, and I had complications the second CS. This is not scary, just to make you aware that there are a lot of things that can go wrong. Thank God I went through it and I came out of it, and I am here to say my story, and I'm not here to scare anyone, just to thank God that I am alive. So you're going to see me more on my channel, because I was going through it. I didn't have time to think about YouTube. There was no time to post. I've just started getting back myself. Thank you for listening to my story. If you had similar experiences, please don't hesitate to put it in the comment section. If you enjoy stories like this, or if you enjoy story time, or if you like videos like this, please do not hesitate to leave a thumbs up and drop a comment, and also subscribe to this little channel. Please get me to 100. I'm doing that 50 something, please, and I promise to be more consistent and post more videos for you. Please don't hesitate to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and drop a comment. See you on my next video. Bye.